Hey guys, what is going on? It is Brook, or the Undead DM, and I'm back after Christmas and New Year's, so I'd like to say to my subscribers and my viewers, Happy Christmas, Merry New Year, all the like. And I'm sorry for not uploading for a little while. I was trying to get everything sorted, and I will be moving soon, so uploads will once again be a little bit stagnant, but I'm hoping with something along the lines of this will be more conducive to regular uploads. Predominantly, anybody who is subscribed to my channel or knows anything of anybody else who has come from another YouTuber by the name of Brook. This is very similar to his format. I have taken a lot of inspiration from his opinion series that he does in his car, and I figured since I'm currently in the car, I might as well. I will definitely leave a link to his channel in the description below. Thank you so much, Brook, for giving me some help here and kind of talking me through some things and helping me through my thought process. I greatly appreciate it. But let's just get started on this. So I don't know what I'm going to title this series yet. Maybe I'll come up with something by the time I get to uploading it. But in this episode of whatever I ended up calling this, I'd like to talk about different RPGs. So I am predominantly a player. I got started back in 2016, 2017, whenever Xanathar's Guide came out. And I had known about D&D for the longest time. I think my first exposure truly to D&D was back in 2009, 2010. I'd gone to my local comic book store, and there they were selling all the 4th edition books that were available at the time. And I'd asked my mother at the time if I could get some, but since they were like $60 a pop, because it was a gaming store, you couldn't really buy them as a young 11-year-old kid. So I honestly didn't get a chance. And then years later, I'd gotten into D&D through a friend who was running a 3.5 game, who eventually stopped running that 3.5 campaign and then moved on to 5th edition, and that's kind of where I stayed. And that's where I predominantly ran most of my games from 2016, 2017, all the way up to the most recent years. My campaign that I've been running, I restarted that campaign twice due to prior issues. But this campaign I'm running, I started it back in early 2020, and it's been going on for a good long while. I created the first one back in early 2020. It ended prior to 2021, and then I restarted it back in 2021, and it ended prior to 2022. And so when 2022 came around, I finally started it, and it's been around 2 years now. I've had pretty much the same players. I've had some people join, some people leave. Some people leave for a short time and come back. But that's beside the point. For most of my RPG life, I have been embroiled in D&D. And I do like D&D as a game. I do like D&D as a concept. Then I started to get really into Pathfinder, predominantly 1st edition, because before 2nd edition came out, they were still selling 1st edition books at Barnes & Noble. And so I'd managed to accrue a lot of the books from Barnes & Noble before buying the rest of them on eBay, and also through the Paizo website. And now that they're selling 2nd edition books pretty much everywhere, I've gotten pretty much all the necessary books that are really needed to play the game. A few of the Kobold Press books for 5th edition is pretty good. Not that impressive, but still relatively good for what 5th edition is. And recently, In case my viewers have not been made aware, I know that some of the people that are watching this will be familiar, but I had started making my own TTRPG system that I had dubbed Operation Undead Catacombs, and it was going to be heavily based on 4th edition with some changes taken from Pathfinder 2nd edition, some aspects from other TTRPGs. Mainly the roleplay aspect will be similar to like Blades in the Dark or City of Mist, where there's actions you can do in roleplay, and every time an action is completed, that kind of eats up the action economy for that roleplay scene, and the roleplay scene only has a certain number of actions that can get done before the next scene moves, and the scene will kind of be moved by the DM. But due to one of Cybrock's videos, that if I can remember which video it is specifically, he talked about how TTRPGs. Give me 1 second. Subway, very nice. Not sponsored. But he talked about how TTRPGs are built in 2 different ways. They're either built from top down or from bottom up. And that 4th edition was built from bottom up. So they got all the mechanics down, they got all the resources down, everything, and they just built upon that, and then at the very top they ended with the flavor of things. So they had the skeleton first, and then they had everything built on top of that. But with 5th edition, it was built in the opposite direction, where they cared more about how the character appeared, if we were to use a RPG analogy like in Skyrim, where instead of picking your race first, you cared about what your character looked like, and then you picked the thing that actually did something with the game, that interacted with it. And that causes a lot of problems, as you may imagine, where you change the features on one character, but then as you move to a different race, because you like that race better, the features completely change what you had initially intended to, so now you have to rejigger everything to fix it. And unfortunately, 5th edition, I'm kind of growing very, I don't want to say burnt out on 5th edition, I'm very jaded towards 5th edition, to the point where base classes don't really excite me. Base classes just seem very boring and vanilla, obviously except for the spellcasters, because spellcasters are broken as fuck. But 5th edition has kind of just become very jaded to me. I don't find any excitement in playing in 5th edition that isn't using some form of homebrew, predominantly from Foxtail Foundry. I will definitely leave a link in the description to that website. It's a bunch of free homebrew. A lot of it is heavily inspired by 4th edition, if not completely original, but has very similar mechanics to make the classes feel unique and powerful in their own way without having to step on the toes of other people. Predominantly what I would recommend, if you have seen this channel before, is Targon the Ancient's Heroic Fighter. I know I gave it some very kind of opposing views in my previous videos, but he has since changed a few things, and now I think it's very, very good. It's much better than Fighter before I made the video, but now it's just even better, and it has gotten on par with what you would expect from, I don't want to say 4th edition, because 4th edition is a completely different system, but it is what you would think of a fighter should be. And it's very good. It's very good. But I think in 5th edition, if Wizards of the Coast are really going to go through with making one D&D, they really need to go back to 4th edition and really look at what made 4th edition good. I'm actually trying to start a game on that, but from what I've read, 4th edition has a lot of good mechanics in terms of the combat system. There are a lot of rules, and a whole chapter is just dedicated to the rules of combat, and it's not like 5th edition where there's maybe 10 pages of rules and that's it. This is at least a 30 to 40 page chapter of just rules of combat. What needs to happen, what happens, how certain things work, what you get for them, and then it moves on to other things. And 5th edition doesn't really have that. There's a lot of confusing things, predominantly that I believe is the hiding mechanics. Like, if a rogue uses their cunning action to hide, and they hide behind a bush, and it's in the middle of a field, and there's no other bushes around, and there's just a bush there, and he hides behind it, does the enemy just suddenly not know where he is, even though there's only one hiding space? It's like, well, technically yes, but also no, because they can make active perception checks, but there's nothing that states what can activate that. Like, what does hiding do? It makes you roll a stealth check. But in the base hiding rules, it states that, you have to beat their passive perception, but if their passive perception's higher than your stealth, then they become alerted, and then they can make active perception against your stealth. But then the question remains, do you roll a secondary stealth check against their now active perception, or do you keep your stealth that you rolled when you were hiding, and then they have to make a check against your stealth, and at which point, if they succeed and they surpass your stealth check, do they know you're there? It's like, well, yeah, obviously. But there's a lot of things that, and also lightly obscured, heavily obscured is a bunch of different rules that don't make a lot of sense. But regardless, we're getting off topic. Sorry about that. I think TTRPGs are very, very interesting. They are intrinsically very unique in how you're supposed to go about problem solving compared to video games, where video games reward you for killing the thing, getting the reward, and then moving on. The TTRPG scene, it rewards you not just for combat, but also for role-playing. And the Dungeon Master can reward you with different things for role-playing, but I think the TTRPG scene right now is going through a burnout. You can obviously see this with things like Critical Role Campaign 3, where they seem to have very strange pacing, and there's a lot more generosity with homebrew and a lot more generosity with magic items starting out. A lot of DMs nowadays who are older, they're going back to 4th edition or 3.5 because 5th edition just doesn't fit the same niche that their editions do, mainly because of how quote-unquote simplified 5th edition is. And honestly, I'm kind of going that way too. I'm going to try 4th edition for the first time with some players soon. But until I've gotten more experience with 4th edition, unfortunately my TTRPG system has been put on hold for the time being. This way I can get a better understanding, because there's a lot of mechanics in 4E that I don't really agree with on a emotional basis. Like on a roleplay stance, I don't agree with. Like the weapons having proficiency bonus attached to them, and that you don't get a proficiency bonus that levels up with you, and your proficiency bonus, quote unquote, is the half your level added to it, which is fine. It's certainly fine, but to me, personally, in my opinion, it feels very boring that you gain a level from 3 to 4 and your to hit bonus just goes up by 1. That's just me, though. I feel that's a little bit boring. I may be wrong on this, And that's why Cybrock has informed me that I should try 4th edition to kind of get an idea of what's going on. And if it goes well, hopefully my players can understand the mechanics and the rules, and I fully understand everything after reading them God knows how many times. Then, maybe I could swap my campaign over to 4th edition and my players will have more fun that way. But that's pretty much all I wanted to say, is that TTRPGs right now I feel are going through a burnout where people are looking at 5th edition and realizing that it's on its way out, and that 1D&D isn't really fixing the issues that 5th edition has, where the martial caster gap isn't really being fixed, it's just kind of being band-aided. The weapons aren't being buffed enough, the spells are getting way too powerful, and casters are getting buffs alongside the marshals, so they're not really closing any gaps. They're not shrinking the gaps, they're just stacking soapboxes underneath the marshals and then giving the casters those same soapboxes when they're on top of the freaking Empire State Building. It's like, okay, cool. Awesome, you buffed everybody. But it was the marshals who needed the buffs, not the casters, so why? This makes no sense. But, yeah.